Welcome, Secretary Jewell. I've got 3 questions to ask, so I'm going to try to talk fast and appreciate you do the same. The state we both call home, the last 2 years has suffered from record-setting catastrophic wildfires. In my district, certainly has been the case. And since 2000, the department's budget for fighting wildfires was less than their actual cost. And I know about the 10-year averaging system that you use for suppression efforts. So after these last 2 fire seasons, do you think a 10-year average is the most practical way to allocate funding for fire suppression, even with your proposed $290 million adjustment to the cap? And additionally, what will likely happen to other critical activities such as forest fuel management, health, and resiliency projects should more funds be required to fight fires in this coming year? And as a follow-up, what do you believe the Interior Department and Forest Service could do to ensure adequate forest management and rehabilitation occurs in order to get ahead of this vicious cycle that we find ourselves in?
Thank you very much for pointing out the vicious cycle. We do not have adequate funds in our budget to continue the work of rangeland and forest health, as well as fighting fires. It's more acute in the Forest Service than it is for the Department of Interior, but it's acute for both of us. I was on the Colville Reservation. I'm a red-carded, so I was able to go out on the fires themselves. These fires are burning hotter and longer because we are not doing fuels treatment. We don't have the money to do that, so we would welcome a fix. We've put in place in our budget the fix that was recommended by Congress and on both bodies, and we hope that passes. Certainly, we could use more for fuels removal, and it would put people to work, and we would welcome an opportunity to do that.
Next question, and I want to thank you for addressing the elephant in the room in your opening comments about the recent protests that shined a spotlight on federal management of lands in the West. I'm talking about what happened in Oregon. One of the issues I hear from my constituents is regarding backburning, the practice of backburning, and you're familiar with that. Certainly in the case of the Hammond family, they're being prosecuted and using an anti-terrorism statute for trying to protect their private property, which I find somewhat concerning. It seems like that's over-prosecution, especially since the federal government uses the same practice. And it's not unusual for those fires if federal government starts to spread onto private lands with no compensation to the landowners. So could I ask you your position on the use of backburning, and what would you have me tell my constituents who have to decide whether to protect their land or face an anti-terrorism charge if they do?
Well, let me separate these a little bit. Backburning is absolutely an important practice for fuels management on private and public lands. And when there is an inadvertent spread, which does occasionally happen, there's typically not a criminal prosecution. The situation with the Hammonds was different, and there was other activity, poaching activity specifically, that was being covered up that came out in that criminal prosecution, which hasn't really hit the media. But there's no question backburning is important, and I would suggest that your constituents work closely with the federal land management agencies to coordinate those efforts, and I think we do that frequently across the landscape.
Thank you. For one more question, just real quick, given that there's ample evidence to support delisting of the gray wolf, do you believe that the wolf has been adequately recovered and should be delisted? And additionally, why has the Department of Interior and the Fish and Wildlife Service failed to finalize this proposed rule and move forward with delisting?
The Fish and Wildlife Service has recommended delisting of the gray wolf due to recovery. We have had that action stayed by the courts, and so we cannot move forward as a result of that, but we have recommended for delisting due to recovery.
So you support delisting?
Correct.
We look forward to working with you on making that happen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.